Imagine a packed subway, tension in the air, and a confrontation about to erupt. But then, out of nowhere, the quietest hero steps in. What happened next? It's the moment the internet can't stop talking about. And wait until you see who it was. It was a typical weekday afternoon on the New York City subway. A mix of hurried professionals, tired students, and tourists clutching maps, all crammed into a single car. The fluorescent lights flickered as the train swayed along the tracks, the rhythmic clatter of wheels filling the space. For most passengers, it was just another commute. Then, a sharp voice pierced the monotony. "Get out of my way, old man." Heads turned as a young man in his 20s, broad-shouldered, wearing a hoodie and sporting an air of arrogance, towered over an older gentleman. The older man, frail and hunched, clutched his cane tightly as he tried to steady himself. His face was pale, and his voice trembled as he responded, "I wasn't trying to block you. I just need a moment." The young man didn't care. His voice grew louder, his words harsher. "A moment? How about you move and stop wasting everyone's time?" His aggressive tone echoed through the car, turning the heads of passengers who had been pretending not to notice. The tension was palpable. Some passengers exchanged uneasy glances, while others buried their faces deeper into their phones, hoping the confrontation would resolve itself. But it didn't. The older man's breathing quickened. He glanced around the car, as if silently pleading for someone, anyone, to step in. Yet no one moved. Until one man did. From the corner of the car, a figure rose slowly. Dressed in a nondescript black jacket, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face, he looked like any other passenger. But there was something about his presence, calm yet commanding, that immediately drew attention. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate and unhurried, and positioned himself between the two men. "Hey," he said softly but firmly, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife through butter. "Let's take it easy." At first, the young man barely reacted, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the stranger. "And who the hell are you?" he sneered. The stranger tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Just someone who thinks we can handle this differently." It wasn't the words themselves, it was the way he said them. His tone was calm, almost soothing, yet there was an edge of authority that made it impossible to ignore. The young man hesitated, his bravado faltering for just a moment. And then, someone in the car whispered, almost audibly, "Wait, is that Keanu Reeves?" The murmurs spread like wildfire. "That's Keanu Reeves," someone else said, louder this time. Heads turned, phones came out, and passengers began recording, their curiosity piqued. But Keanu? He didn't seem to notice or care. His attention was solely on the young man. "Look," Keanu continued, his voice as steady as ever, "we've all had tough days. Maybe this is one of yours. But taking it out on someone else isn't going to make it any better." The young man blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected compassion in Keanu's words. He looked around the car, suddenly aware of the growing attention. His initial instinct was to push back, to assert his dominance. But something about Keanu's presence made him pause. Meanwhile, the older man finally spoke, his voice trembling but grateful. "Thank you," he said softly, his eyes welling up with tears. I didn't know what to do." Keanu turned to him and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to worry," he said with a small smile. "You're not alone." The atmosphere in the train car shifted. The tension that had gripped everyone just moments ago melted away, replaced by an almost palpable sense of relief. Passengers who had been too afraid to act now found themselves clapping, cheering, and thanking Keanu for stepping in. But Keanu? He didn't bask in the applause. Instead, he offered a small, almost shy smile, nodded at the older man, and returned to his seat. He pulled out a well-worn book from his jacket pocket and began reading, as if nothing had happened. It was classic Keanu, quiet, humble, and completely uninterested in making a scene. The young man, clearly embarrassed, muttered a half-hearted apology and moved to the other end of the car. The older gentleman sat down, still shaken but visibly comforted by Keanu's intervention. Within minutes, the video clips started making their way onto social media. The hashtags #Keanu Reeves hero and #Subway savior began trending almost instantly. People couldn't get enough of the story, how one of Hollywood's most beloved actors had once again shown that his off-screen character was just as remarkable as the roles he played. But for those who witnessed it firsthand, the story wasn't just about Keanu. It was a reminder of something deeper, that sometimes all it takes to change the course of a moment is one person willing to stand up and do what's right. The video, captured by multiple passengers, went viral within hours. Social media exploded with admiration for Keanu's quiet courage. People praised not just his words but his approach, the way he diffused the situation without escalating it, the way he stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves. And perhaps most importantly, the video sparked a larger conversation. In a world that often feels divided and disconnected, Keanu reminded everyone of the power of simple kindness and courage. So, what do you think? Would you have stepped in if you were on that train? Or would you have stayed silent, like most of the passengers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, consider sharing it, because sometimes a little inspiration is all we need to make the world a better place.